Thank you, thank you. Thank you very much. And welcome to Cats and Dogs here on Press TV with me, Len Topic. And this week, we're taking a look at one nation's ability to blow $2 trillion to achieve absolutely nothing. Yes, in one of the biggest financial and military own goals in history, the US government has managed to spend 10 times the entire annual gross domestic product of New Zealand on a war in Afghanistan that has got them right back to where they started, or worse. Now here's my question. Why is the whole world talking about the return of the Taliban? The problem is they can't return because they never left in the first place. If they had ever gone outside Afghanistan, the point about a return might make some sense. But instead, what they're actually doing is just taking back some small pockets briefly occupied by the American troops over the past 20 years. If you divide the cost by the surface area actually held by the Americans, it would have been cheaper for the US military to buy Manhattan. And more fun. Because, as I keep saying, even after $2 trillion, Afghanistan still has no McDonald's. As the Americans were wasting their time strolling through poppy fields, apparently not realizing that the poppies were not being grown for their ornamental beauty, the Taliban were preparing themselves for a fierce face-off. But then, as if by magic, the USA left the country in the night time when nobody was looking because everybody else was asleep. So here is the Americans' achievement over the past 2 decades. When they invaded Afghanistan, the Taliban flag was flying over the country. Now they're leaving after spending that $2 trillion. Yep, the Taliban flag is flying again all over Afghan soil. The only real question is, where did they hide that flag while they were waiting? Apparently the Americans couldn't even find that. The fact is, the sirens of the US Embassy in Afghanistan were constantly wailing over there ever since the US invasion. That was a bit of a clue that things might not have been going brilliantly. But no one seemed to notice. The Americans like to be known as the champions of peace, security and democracy across the world. Maybe that's why they were once such good friends with bin Laden. But let's not get into that just now. But now it really is beginning to look Orwellian, like newspeak, to borrow a phrase from that classic and frighteningly relevant book, 1984. When George Bush announced that he wanted to bring peace and security to Afghanistan, everybody knew that meant a big invasion was on the way. When the Americans said they wanted to fight terrorism in the Middle East, more terrorist groups like Daesh and al-Nusra came into existence. When they said they wanted to fight narcotics, they turned Afghanistan in practice into a narco state. Did you know that by 2014, Afghanistan was producing 3 times as much opium as it did in 2000? And by 2015, the country was the source of 90% of the world's opium poppy. Why? Because it's a cash crop and farmers do what pays. When the Americans said that they wanted to bring peace and security to Iraq, anti-war groups raised the alarm. But hey, they went in anyway, and the rest is violent history. The lesson here is that if the US offers to bring peace and democracy to your land, just tell them to send their money instead, and you'll sort the rest out yourself. I'm serious. Can you remember the last time the US actually visited that region without tanks, fighter jets, or drones? It was meant to be the 1980 Olympic Games in the USSR, but they didn't go because they objected to, wait for it, the Soviet Union's invasion of Afghanistan. How ironic is that? On the upside, 20 years of war in Afghanistan has had some positive sides too. For example, the media can now replace the out-of-date phrase of another Vietnam for the US with another Afghanistan for the US. People can now say things like, the US attempt to revive democracy in Cambodia has turned the country into another Afghanistan. It's also provided American writers and poets with a whole new set of imagery. Instead of saying things like, my heart is like a mirror. You can break it into pieces, but when you look close, you're still in it. That old cliche can now be updated to the Taliban-friendly phrase, my heart is like Afghanistan. You can break it into pieces, but when you look close, You're still in it. And of course, Hollywood can have a whole new war movie bonanza with hundreds of films about the plight of American soldiers and drones in Afghanistan. What do the statistics tell us? Well, thanks to 2 decades of the US military presence in Afghanistan, all the important figures have gone up. Unemployment, up. Drug addiction, up. Violent conflicts, up. Suicide, up. Everything up, up, up. Western countries have expressed their concern over the departure of US troops from the region. Some say it will lead to problems over human rights in that region. Well, that's a fair point. Thanks to the US military presence in, say, some Arab countries, such as Saudi Arabia, women can now drive and go to the cinema without ending up behind bars. Who knows what would happen if US troops left those places? Would the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia stay peace-loving? Would Yemen still enjoy US aid and support, albeit in the form of aerial bombings? And would Washington's one-time allies, Al-Qaeda and al-Nusra, even be able to afford to continue their work without Washington's benevolent influence on all that, let's call it, nation building in the region?
I stand squarely behind my decision. I will support you.
Why, Bernie?
I'm tired of criticizing the Democrats anymore. No one listens to me.
I stand squarely behind my decision.
You deeply sleep by your foolish decision. If I were in your shoes, I would make the best decision ever.
It was your decision, too.
I never decided to escape from Afghanistan.
I stand squarely behind my decision.
Is there anyone to turn him off?
Mr. Trump, everything was good when you were president. We were living in peace.
In my opinion, Ashraf is the best politician ever in the world.
You had a different opinion this morning. Republicans changed their opinions in accordance with their interests, but Democrats stand squarely behind their decisions.
I stand squarely behind my decision.
What will you do, John, if you win the next election?
I'll write threatening tweets against the Taliban, all caps. I'm sure they'll listen to me.
You silly. No one listens to you. Grow up, Don.
I stand squarely behind my decision.
For God's sake, please.
Yes, over the past 2 decades, the Americans have spent $2 trillion to build West Asia and North Africa. And we only have to look at Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, Yemen, Libya, Palestine, and of course Lebanon to see the results. So where next for the US military? Which country could benefit most from America's intervention to get its centralized system of rules sorted out, fix its shaky economy, and drive out people who are opposed to links with the United States? Yes, ladies and gentlemen, based on those criteria, it might finally be time for the American military to invade and conquer France. That's all for this week. Join me again next time to find out where else the Americans plan to declare war in the name of peace, how much it's going to cost them, or whether they'll just wire all the money to the Taliban instead. Not as crazy as it sounds. That's all on Press TV with me, Len Potopic, and Cats and Dogs.